Someone who can give us much more perspective on that issue now, Tuvia Gehring, Chinese media research fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Thanks for being with us here. First and foremost, as things are still playing out and we're seeing a bit of the scandal, at least attempting to emerge from the Trump campaign, how are people in China, how does American democracy look right now to people in China?
So to people in China, it looks pretty amusing, to say the least, but also very interesting. These people are seeing very interesting things happen and in the U.S.'s democracy, and they have been talking about it quite a lot on the Chinese social networks. But on the official Chinese media, there is pretty much a gag order not to speak about it because they're afraid that it will perhaps they'll be accused of influencing U.S.'s voting, and that could be problematic. But yeah.
Well, certainly, look, here at I-24 News, we focus on many of the international perspectives and how they relate, obviously, to the U.S. here. But looking at any potential shift of international policy here, depending on who wins the election, let's take a look at Biden here. What might change between the U.S. and China under President Biden?
So it is very unclear what's exactly going to happen with the Biden administration. Even more so, I don't think it has been formulated yet on many issues because he was mostly focused on internal affairs. But in his campaign, he had to be tough on China. That is probably a reaction to Trump's campaign that appeared to be even more tougher. That was the main issue. But it is understandable, and I think everyone expects that, including China, that he will tone down and act as, a true all-American president that acts more responsibly and calmly as opposed to Trump's more firebrand style. But Trump is leaving behind him kind of a scorched earth foreign policy as regards to China. And, it affects many of issues. It affects the foreign policy, the trade war, the tech war, the cyber warfare, the South China Sea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, human rights, strategic rivalry, and the list goes on. And from what I gather, Biden will be more similar to Trump than Obama because this is the way he saw things as a vice president. But still, again, it is very unclear. He did promise that he will likely put more emphasis on alliances and values, whatever that exactly means. But what we can read from that is through alliances, this means he'll try to contain China. That's at least how China sees it. Through values, he will try to confront China. But there's also a third issue that he said or at least hinted that he will work on with China, and that is the international challenges like COVID or climate change, where instead of containing and confronting, he can actually cooperate with China. And many in the U.S., in Washington, and also in China hope that that's going to happen eventually.
And we certainly know the hostility has been very upfront from President Trump recently, talking about the coronavirus as purely a Chinese creation here. So obviously this is an important moment for China here. But you mentioned a little bit here about the rest of the Southeast Asia, the South China Sea, the issues there, Taiwan. Does that factor greatly for these countries as well? Is the region at large really holding their breath for the outcome of this election or not?
Obviously, like here in Israel, most of the countries of the world, including China and East Asian countries, they are pretty much, you can say, holding their breath and trying to see what will be the result, because everyone understands that the next president, incumbent, will have consequential repercussions on their foreign policy. And it is very important to look at how Biden, which appears to be the president-elect, we're still going to have to wait a couple of hours to see, but what his policy is going to be regarding to East Asia and Southeast Asian countries. That's very important. There is a high possibility that he will continue the pivot to Asia, what started during President Obama's first administration. And he will also probably continue Trump's Indo-Pacific strategy, which also means to contain China through partnership and alliances, through the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But still, it is very unclear what eventually will happen. There's still plenty of things he hasn't formulated yet in his foreign policy and plenty of question marks on all ends. But they have been paying attention very closely, and they hope and that Biden will keep up his promise that he will try to mend the alliances after many countries in East Asia, especially South Korea, but not just, have been denigrated during the Trump administration and sidelined. And
certainly massive issues and massive countries at stake here. Tuvia Goering, thanks for breaking it down for us again. So